Good evening and welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I'm Star Smart. Let's begin. The political climate in La République du Cameroon is once again teetering on the edge of crisis. After more than 4 decades of one-man rule, the recent presidential election has done little to restore faith in a system already soaked in corruption and distrust. What was meant to be a democratic exercise has instead deepened the country's fractures as opposition voices grow louder, defiant and unwilling to be silenced this time. Yet as the old guard clings desperately to power, the streets whisper a different story, one of discontent, disillusion, and perhaps a turning tide. Could this finally be the moment when the people's exhaustion outweighs their fear? Or will the familiar script of repression, censorship, and manipulation play out once again, as it has done for decades? Meanwhile, across the borders of this crumbling order, Ambazonia stands, watch, hopeful yet strategic. Its people and leadership, those still exiled and unrecognized by the colonial regime, are gaining ground in the realm of international diplomacy. For the first time, Ambazonian voices are being heard in respected global platforms. The struggle no longer dismissed as a whisper from the margins, but acknowledged as a legitimate call for justice and self-determination. Now, as the world watches La République's post-election tension unfold, one question remains. Could this chaotic moment in Yaoundé become the very window through which Amazonia secures its long-awaited recognition and freedom from a regime that has long lost its moral compass? Well, this is Undaunted, and you're welcome. Do stay tuned. And these are the prime headlines on Undaunted tonight. 2 killed, 2 injured in Bamenda bike crash amid delayed urban bypass project. Even foreigners want Biya out. Global outrage as 92-year-old Paul Biya clings to power. Biya declared winner yet again. Wonder if corruption in Cameroon is too deep to die. Then President Sako strategically leans on America for diplomacy. And in Africa, Ivory Coast tension soars ahead of presidential election as gendarme killed in opposition stronghold. On the global scene, White House holds plan for Trump-Putin meeting after Budapest talks proposal. With that, we head on to the full briefings of Undaunted tonight. Two young men have tragically lost their lives in a ghastly bike accident along the upstation slope on Sunday night, in what many describe as yet another painful reminder of the regime's neglect of Amazonian lives and infrastructure. The victims, identified as Hali and Abba, were riding alongside 2 other companions when their motorbikes crashed around 9 p.m. The 4 were immediately rushed to the Bamenda Regional Hospital, where Hali and Abba succumbed to their injuries in the early hours of Monday morning. Their remains were later laid to rest in strict Muslim tradition. The two survivors are currently receiving medical treatment. Eyewitnesses say the exact cause of the accident remains uncertain, but residents have long complained about the steep slope, poor lighting, and terrible state of road and overload on that route, factors that continue to make the upstation stretch almost a death trap for commuters. The upstation road linking Bamenda's commercial heart to the colonial administrative quarters has recorded a disturbing rise in accidents in recent months. This latest tragedy has reignited calls for urgent attention to the city's dilapidated infrastructure, especially as locals are yet to see the commencement of the so-called Bamenda Urban Bypass project, ceremoniously commissioned by the colonial Prime Minister, Chief Dr. Joseph John Ngute, over a month ago. The residents are questioning the essence of such foundation stone ceremonies when no tangible work follows through, viewing them as mere propaganda spectacles designed to mask decades of systemic abandonment and exploitation. For many in Bamenda, this tragic loss of young lives stands as a haunting symbol of the continued neglect of Ambazonia's people and the empty promises of the occupying regime, promises laid in speeches but never in concrete, tangible actions. Now, we see in another news report a viral video of a Chinese trader lamenting the state of his Cameroonian client. It has once again thrown the spotlight on the worsening economic crisis in La République du Cameroon under the aging dictator Paul Biya, who at 92 years old is still seeking yet another 7 years term in office. In the video, the Chinese man expresses visible frustration and confusion after realizing that his longtime Cameroonian customer, who used to buy second-hand clothes in bulk, has now been unable to place an order in over 2 years. Each time he tries to reach out, the client gives the same painful reason that things are hard, inflation is killing, and he can barely pay his bills. Perplexed by his client's unending struggle and complaints of economic downslide, the trader decided to look up the country's leadership only to discover that the so-called president has ruled for over 4 decades and is now 92, yet still determined to stay in power. In this belief, the Asian man questioned what a 92-year-old wants with power when his people cannot even afford basic needs. Now, before we get into that video, let's say good evening to Barrister Mbeseha, because it's always a pleasure having you on the show. Barrister Mbeseha, to be sure you're connected. Good evening and welcome. Always a pleasure. So before we get into that video, before we get into the discourse, we'll take a look at this video of this Asian man making this complaint. And we've already read of the state of Amazonia roads, which are terrible. The economy poor, roads dilapidated, everything going downslide. But then we still see President Paul Biya clinging to power. Here is what this Asian merchant had to say about his discovery of Cameroon's leadership. Let's take a quick listen and we'll get back to you.
Hey, fam, check this out. What our 90 years old still do? Look at this guy. Do you know him? Cameroon President Paul Biya, 92 years old, not 29. He's running for another 7 years terms. Finish this one and he will be 99. I don't get what these brothers think at 92. Most of the folks cannot even take care of themselves. But he's out here chasing the presidency again. This one been ruling Cameroon for over 42 years old now. Rosa is 40. And he's been presidency longer than I've been alive. I didn't know before, but now it's click. Why my Cameroon clients finish audit second-hand clothes from Mr. Ross for 7 years straight, but the last 2, nothing. Every time I hit him up, hey bro, what's good? He's like, market is trash, tariffs too high, competitions, key needs, no profits. I didn't buy it. Now I see. With Cameroon 30 million people stuck under this shameless powerful, hungry guy treating the countries like his personal playground. How is the economic supposed to grow? Higher tariffs, fierce competition in import like used clothes is all tied to bad leadership, stifling business, and get this, I mean his own doctor calling him out on TikTok, blasting him for the suffering poverty, for stagnation after those years. He's urging folks not to voting for him. God, please stop this crazy old man at 92. It's time to retire. Raise up and let the next generation to take the wheel. What do you think, Fan?
Now, I ask that question now to you, Barrister Mbeseha. Listening to that video, what do you think?
Then you go down and ask, if you go to read in his mind, the mind of the president, what does the president really want? At 93, the next step is that he must die. And so since death is so near, very few people reach the age of 100. But I'm sure it looks like he's even more than 100. Because when he was born, no records were kept of his birth. So it's close to 100. Few human beings live up to that. But even if he's getting to 100 and still wants to be president, one must conjecture, what does this man want? I think the only thing he wants is to have a state funeral. Because if he dies tomorrow, he'll be given a state funeral. What is a state funeral? A state funeral is grandeur. People will come with planes. They will invite foreign heads of states. They will come and drink and eat and do whatever thing when they want. The president will no longer be there. He cannot even be able to read his own speech. He will not be there. He is deceiving himself, like most of us. That when you are buried in grandeur, you probably carry your grandeur to heaven. Now you're dead. You're dead. What people are doing to bury you is for the people who are living. The dead don't eat. The dead don't talk. The dead don't rule. And so it is unfortunate that it is a world event. It has ceased to be a national event. It is a world event to see that somebody 90-something years old is fighting for another 7-year term. It has never occurred anywhere else in the world. Never. The last we know is President Mugabe, when he was 92, 93. But he was not even looking for a 7-year term, he was looking for 4. He didn't even succeed. And so I think what that guy has said in raw language is what every Cameroonian should say, is what every African should say, is what every human being should say. But, curious enough, the people who matter are silent. Among them, President Macron of France. President of France, Macron of France, when this man was got to power, I think he was just about 8 or 2 old. He was a baby. If he was Africa, he was still suckling his mother's breast. But he has grown up today as the president of France, who has the power to tell this guy to keep quiet, to move away, if that is what is necessary. But they are not saying it. And so you must wonder what world we live in. You must wonder what all this Africa is about. 2 days ago, so we were talking about Africa, African forest, African whatever. The white man has taken all these African riches. Africa, this is Africa. The African leaders are silent. Sometimes the truth is bitter, but must be told. Are they telling this guy the truth? If they tell him the truth, he thinks he can resist the world. He must be a superhuman being. And so it is sad, very, very sad. Not because we don't expect anything from him. It is so sad that even at that age, he should still be looking for a 7-year term. 93, 7 years makes you 100. He has already beaten the record. Nobody has ever ruled up to that length. Even in China, with one party, nobody has ever handled power for that long length of time. Not even whoever is not available. And so I'm sorry for the Cameroonians who are our neighbors. If they have the record of the worst things on earth, they are beating the Guinness record of presidents living for life, presidents serving for more than half a century, not because they are elected, but because they are appointed. Not because they just appointed, they are being defended with the guns, but with the taxpayers' money. Which taxpayer cannot find water to drink? Which taxpayer does not even have lights? Which taxpayer has no rope even to drive a bicycle on it? It's shame, it's sad, shame onto Cameroon, shame onto Africa, shame onto France. Over to you.
Well, Barrister, it's such a shame. Well, we see that frustration of these completely non-Cameroon person, an Asian man, his frustration indeed mirrors the anguish of millions across the Cameroons who have watched their economy collapse under Biya's suffocating rule. Now, this moment of truth from an unlikely voice, a foreign trader thousands of miles away, reflects a global acknowledgement of a regime that has long overstayed its welcome. The trader's simple plea, let the young people lead, let the next generation lead. It now echoes across the continent, resonating deeply with Cameroonians and Amazonians alike who have suffered decades of economic ruin, suppression, repression, corruption, and leadership decay. The once thriving small businesses, markets, and local industries have been crippled by inflation, poor governance, and a currency system still tied to France's colonial grip. Even those who once found creative means to survive, like the trader's client, they are now sinking under the weight of poverty, 2 years without any patronage, a visible sign that the regime's promises have failed entirely. With presidential elections recently held, an octogenarian, now nonagenarian Paul Biya yet again on the ballot. The atmosphere in La Republique is quite tense. Opposition candidate Isachi Roma Bakari has already declared victory, claiming to have won in several regions, though citizens wait in skepticism for the official results to be released on Thursday, October 23rd. But beyond the ballot and political drama, the message is loud and clear. The world is watching, and even foreigners now see what Cameroonians have long endured, an exhausted nation led by a man too old to govern, yet too power-hungry to let go. For Amazonians, this stands as further proof of a crumbling colonial system that has exploited and silenced the people for decades. The cries for change are no longer whispers from within, they have become global. Barrister Mbeseha, now while many are calling for younger generation, the younger leadership to replace Paul Biya's decade-old regime, some Cameroonians and other people around the world are starting to argue that the problems seem to run deeper than even age, that even young leaders in the system today already exhibit the same traits of corruption and self-interest. In your view, is Cameroon's leadership crisis really about age, or is it more about a mindset that has been passed down through the same corrupt political culture?
No, it is not about age. It's not about age. Because if you were about age, Easter Chiroma, who is trying to replace this guy, who is challenging this guy, is getting to 80 years old. In a normal country, very few people at 80 were looking for power. So it's not about age. It's about this whole principle. That's what I said earlier, that even if this man had served if he was only 30, 50, 60, the fact of having served 8 terms, 7 terms, or 7 years is enough for you to go away. Because they have the bigger problem, or the biggest problem with Cameroon in particular, and maybe some parts of Africa in general, is the transformation of the national cake into a personal glory. The presidency of the republic is a national. It comes with disadvantages. Those privileges are privileges of the nationals. No one individual should ever confiscate those things for himself or for herself. No matter how good you claim to be, there comes a time that you let others have the same enjoyment. It's a national cake. It's a national thing. The nation is different from you, the individual. Call yourself Paul Biya or anybody. You are not the nation. There are other people in that country that would also like to enjoy the privileges of that office, just naturally. And so you have to leave, not because you're old. You have to leave because you have taken your turn. As simple as that. All of us remember how when Obama got the office here in the United States, he was a very young man. He could have been still been in office today because he's not even off to have the age of Paul Biya. He's like Biya's first son. He served his 8 years and he had to go. Let that office go to someone else. That's just the principle. No matter your good performance or your bad performance, someone else must replace you. Because we're criticizing him, we cannot compare one thing. There's always comparison of two things. You cannot compare whether the country would have developed better or not with Paul Biya alone. Let someone else come there. And then we compare that person's job, performance, with the previous one. That's just the basic natural principle. So if it's just enjoying the red carpet, walking on the red carpet, followed by your wife in red or in green or in black, that is a privilege that other citizens should be given the opportunity to enjoy. That's just that. That's my take about it. Over to you.
Of corruption running down the veins in La Republique, I beg your pardon. We see deleted results that was once posted on CRTV but then deleted minutes later, silenced voices, threats from Atanga NG, all of this raising grave questions about the future of leadership in La Republique du Cameroon. 8 days after the presidential election, the National Vote Counting Commission has announced what many saw coming long before ballots were even casted. Paul Biya, aged 92, the possible winner once again, with 53% of the votes ahead of opposition candidate Isachiroma Bakari, who reportedly scored 35 according to the predictions. But the announcement has done little to calm the storm brewing across the country. Opposition leader Isachiroma had only days earlier declared victory himself, citing his own tallies that placed him at a 60%, a figure briefly published by several online portals before they were mysteriously deleted. We wonder if that was coincidence or censorship in clear display. Now, the timing and manner of those deletions have only deepened suspicion that the regime's machinery of control remains firmly intact. For many, this looks less like an election result and more like a carefully rehearsed performance. The same old acts with the same old ending. And when Atanga Ng, the colonial minister of territorial administration, issues threats to anyone who dares question the results, it only reinforces what Cameroonians already know. Dissent is not tolerated, truth is not welcomed, and power is not earned. It is seized, recycled, and guarded with fear. So the question arises, is corruption in La République du Cameroon now too deep to die? When portals disappear, when voices are silenced, and when official results seem to exist only to confirm the ruler's will, what meaning does democracy still hold? After 42 years of uninterrupted rule, the regime continues to reproduce itself, the same faces, the same decrees, the same excuses. The masses, battered by poverty and inflation, are left to wonder whether leadership in their country is a service or a lifetime inheritance. Now, as protests flare and clashes erupt in major cities, the people's frustration is clear. But so is their exhaustion. They have seen this movie too many times, elections that promise hope and outcomes that deliver despair. And yet the resilience of the people persists because beyond the statistics and the proclamations, a truth remains unspoken. The day will come when the old order collapses under the weight of its own lies. Until then, the world watches a 92-year-old Paul Biya, crowned once more, not by the will of his people, but by the iron grip of a system that has long mistaken fear for loyalty and silence for peace. Which leaves us with a question. With Paul Biya once again showing, according to news, declared as the possible winner at age 92, which means he has been declared to win for another 7 years, meaning he's going to, if any chance at all, leave power at 99. Now, despite widespread claims of rigging, deleted online results, and open threats from Atanga Ng to anyone who questions the outcome, how can the people still place any faith in what is called democracy within La République du Cameroon? And at what point does the constant recycling of power stop being politics and become a full-blown cause for the people to revolt? Seeing the fact that Atanga Ng has silenced every other person who declared themselves winner, but has allowed this speculation of Paul Biya being the possible, emerging as the possible winner, allowing that to spread. What does this really tell about the La République du Cameroon's administration at this point? Barrister Mbeseha.
I think the administration of Cameroon is so unique around the world that I've done a lot of reading, I've read history and other things. It is so difficult to find an administration like that. Again, talking about elections, there have never been elections in Cameroon. From Mahijo to Paul Biya. The first time they attempted to hold elections was in 1992. But remember that by 1992, Paul Biya was already 10 years old in office. He already clocked 10 years. He got there in 1982. And so under normal circumstances, like in most African countries, he would have already served 2 terms and that was enough. He would never have been a candidate anymore. But yet he became a candidate. Somebody defeated him. They played it out. They don't even hide it. They robbed that guy of his victory. They locked him up under a state of emergency and silenced him until he died. Why is Atanga Ng doing this? That's the principal actor. Atanga Ng is just one of the several buffoons they call ministers. But again, why are they doing all this? They are doing it because of self-greed. Because among those so-called ministers of Paul Biya, Atanga Ng will look like one of the youngest, not in terms of age, but in terms of office. He got it in 2018, after the last elections. But there are ministers in Paul Biya's government who have been there for 30 years. who have been in office for 30 years plus, serving as ministers. The office of minister in Cameroon, like anywhere else, goes with it goes with money. It goes with all what we have with it. People have owned this thing for 30 years. It's difficult to become normal human beings by going back to the cartier and living like you and me. They find it difficult to become normal human beings, drive to the hospital and be treated there. And so they allow themselves there, not for the purpose of the people, the purpose of self. We talk about the beginning. You find the people demonstrating in the streets. Who rigs the elections? The people who are in somewhere saving at the discretion of Biya, appointed by some presidential decree. They are their sisters, their wives, who want to maintain these offices. But again, it is interesting. It's not alone. There are people who are serving in Biya's government, who are normal civil servants who are supposed to take retirement at the age of 65. They are older than 65. They have not gone on retirement. There is somebody who calls himself the Supreme Commander, the chief, the commander of the Cameroon Army, who is supposed to have taken retirement more than 40 years ago. He's 86 or so, I'm told. He's sitting there wearing those uniforms. He can barely stand. He can barely even stand up. And he's the commander of the army. That looks interesting. There's another guy who is supposed to be a police chief. The policemen are supposed to be agile, run down the streets and catch thieves, run down the place and investigate people. These young boys, who can get there 18 to 15 or to 25. Who is their boss? Their boss is a certain Baraga, who is 86 years old. He can barely stand. What does an 86-year-old man want there? What does a 90-year-old want, retired general want in office, other than just the prestige of sitting there without standing up? If a bomb were to fall in the office, they can barely stand. They go on work. They go on tricycles. There's somebody who will declare the result of the election, called Atagana. This magistrate. He goes now on stretchers. See his pictures. He walks on stretchers. He's 80-something years old. Well, this looks like the curse of the century. Because I don't imagine any other administration in the world that is littered with helpless, old, dying people. And so it is misfortune. I don't know what punishment, what crime the Cameroonians committed to merit this wonderful eternal punishment from God. Because if the gods still live, why are they not listening to this plea of these young people in Cameroon? Not Amazonian. In Cameroon, they have about 20 million, most of them young people. Why are they being punished with this sort of terrible things? If God is alive, we can only urge him in prayers to rescue the people. People are limited. They don't have much to do. They can only go to the street. And when they go to the street, what happens? They are sprayed with cannon, with water to disperse them to go back home. They are pushed around. Using the money they have worked as young men and paid taxes to punish them for opening their mouths to challenge the status quo. And so that's the most unfortunate thing that has happened. Again, let any other human beings in Cameroon have also the opportunity to enjoy those facilities, to enjoy those privileges. What you enjoy as a president, as a minister, as a prime minister, is a privilege. It's not a right. And so that is what it is. Cameroon is cursed, but I've said on many occasions before, they are cursed. They have the government they deserve. If they decide to push out Biya this night, he will go. You will have to leave. So we can only encourage them to fight. Now that their eyes are open, fight for what you want. Prayers on top of the mountain will not help you until you fight the war yourself. Then God will bless your efforts in the struggle, in the fighting. Then you go to pray in the cathedral, go pray in the mosque. That alone will not bring Allah from heaven to come and help you. You have to fight, and then Allah, God, shall bless your efforts to push away these dead people living. Over to you.
No truer words were said, Barrister Mbeseha. And indeed, I think the election with the whole tensions going on in Cameroon has brought the world to not only see the fraudulence in with La Republique's election, but also the legitimacy of Ambazonia's struggle for self-determination. And speaking on that diplomatic front, we see that in a recent Newsweek feature analyzing the Trump administration's evolving diplomatic strategy in Africa, Dr. Sako, the president of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, offered compelling insights on reshaping the United States engagement across the continent. Dr. Sako emphasized that Africa's relationship with the United States should move beyond the Cold War era ideological framework, which he described as outdated and limiting. Instead, he envisions a pragmatic and future-oriented partnership, one that promotes economic growth, democracy, and justice rather than patronage and control. The Newsweek piece also cited Dr. J. Peter Pham, a respected U.S. diplomat and Africa strategist, who argued that as China's influence in Africa wanes, the United States has a unique opportunity to redefine its engagement on mutually beneficial terms rather than through competition or coercion. Presidential diplomacy on the global stage can be seen with the publication of President Samuel Sako's remarks in one of America's top magazines. We're talking of the Newsweek, which marks a significant diplomatic moment for Ambazonia. His participation in the discussion on the United States-Africa relations shows that Ambazonian leadership is being recognized as a legitimate voice in global affairs. In his remark, President Sako urged Washington to adopt a more principled and justice-oriented foreign policy, particularly towards Cameroon, whose long-standing dictatorship has plunged both La Republique and Ambazonia into crisis. By doing so, he positioned Ambazonia not merely as a breakaway region, but as a reformed-minded, strategic actor advocating for peace and democratic values within Africa's geopolitical landscape. President Sako's warning to international stakeholders, these advice or suggestion, if we want to call it that, is quite a reminder to an earlier speech that he made, the suggestion he gave on the Newsweek that was highlighted on the Newsweek article. It's a reminder of a speech that he made prior to this time. Well, let's take a listen to that speech.
To international stakeholders, friends and partners of Cameroon, especially those who still place loyalty to failed rulers like Biya above justice for the people, take heed. Those who side with drowning dictators stand against the people. Learn from Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Senegal, and now Cote d'Ivoire. The oppressed always reclaim their power, one way or the other. And when they do not forget those who aided their oppressors. Those who prop up undemocratic regimes, the case of Bazoum, Ouattara, Compaoré, Biya, always end up on the trash pages of African history. And when the people will arise, do not blame it on Russian propaganda, for I have told you the truth.
Oh, well, those who aid with drowning dictators stand against the people. The oppressed always reclaim their power one way or another. And when they do not forget those who aided their oppressors. That wonderful speech, a summary. We see that he cited examples from countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Senegal, and Cote d'Ivoire. At the time, even Madagascar hadn't come up, but now there is Madagascar, which is drawing parallels to Cameroon's decaying regime under Paul Biya, whom he accused of clinging to power at the expense of human dignity, as can be seen in the daily lives of the people of Cameroon. Sako's message was both a moral rebuke and a strategic signal, a reminder that the global tide is shifting in favor of people-driven governance and that Amazonia stands on the right side of history. Interestingly, we see that while the remarks of President Sako was highlighted amongst the United States diplomat, we see that his contribution did not really go unnoticed, not just by the Newsweek. We see that President Sako's contribution did not go unnoticed, as Ambassador Thibault Nagy as well, former United States Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, he also publicly praised the Newsweek article on X, highlighting specifically Dr. Samuel Ikome Sako's remark, as well as that of J.P. Farr. He said, excellent overview in Newsweek. Let's have it on screen kindly. Excellent overview at Newsweek on how President Trump's transactional policy could be great for overall United States Africa engagement. Among those quoted are at Dr. J.P. Farr and Dr. Sako, one of the Amazonia diaspora leaders, well worth a read. Now, such a public acknowledgement from a high-profile American diplomat underscores Sako's growing credibility within the United States policy circles and signals that Amazonia's diplomatic efforts are beginning to gain recognition beyond African borders. Well, Barrister Mbeseha, I must say that this is first a huge feat for not just the government of Amazonia led by Sako, but the entire struggle for liberation. Now, what do you think about this, Barrister Mbeseha? The fact that he was not just highlighted by Newsweek, but also recognized again by Ambassador Thibault Nagy as a worthy read. What do you think about this highlight?
I think the highlight is tremendously important, and it saves us in diplomacy. It should also save us back home in the house, because we have brothers and sisters who are also claiming to be doing diplomacy, what they call open diplomacy. Why we don't deny them the right to their open diplomacy, where it is going to stand in hotel rooms or in the supermarket? That is their right. But it takes time, it takes power, it takes language, it takes skills to be referenced in papers like the Newsweek, not local newspapers published in some farm villages somewhere. Thibault Nagy was quoting the Newsweek. He didn't invent it. He was simply quoting it. There's not the paper that anybody could claim that we want to bounce him over, about the editors over. Now, we don't even know where they are, but we didn't give them the story. But they were not quoting Dr. Sako out of the context. They were trying to say the doctrine of President Trump. If you deny Sako the right to be known, you cannot deny President Trump. When the policy of the United States is public, when it comes out publicly, be it under Trump, under Clinton, or any president, they want to see how the world appreciates it. And so the Trump White House, when they put out their policy, they want to see how the world appreciates it. And the other observers around the world, politicians, important newspapers, want to see what the world is thinking about it. And so it's not as simple as that, even just to be quoted, for you to say something until someone will quote you and refer you to supporting Mr. Trump. I'm quoting you from an internationally recognized magazine, a magazine that is read across the world in different languages. And so those who say this is not a milestone, maybe they are living in a different world. Again, that's a milestone to us. That's a milestone to the president. It brings him on the notice board of the world. But he doesn't go there alone. He is being quoted as the president of some country, some place that some people do not even know about it. And so we can also say kudos to us. And again, back to the house, not criticizing our friends of Amazonia, who have come out openly and told us that open diplomacy is the best. Why we encourage them go on? Do it. We want to see your own results. This is the result that anybody can say, yes, this is good work. If you just want to deny it, you have the right to deny. You have the right to your opinion, to deny it if you don't want it. But your denial will not change anything. The newspaper, that Newsweek magazine, is still read around the world. Well, not something quoted in the Cameroon Post or the Cameroon Tribune or that of junk paper. Now, if you underestimate the power of Newsweek around the world in media, you must make a mistake. So I want to say thank the president for all his efforts. Thank the Newsweek for reporting this thing the way they should report. Thank Table Nash, who is one greatest diplomat in Africa. He has served in the foreign department, the foreign service. Thank him for pointing out the story. Again, it takes time, but presidents of the United States, presidents of France, presidents of what any other country, especially those powerful countries, they want to see how popular their policies are. And when you follow them, of course, nothing goes for nothing. Over to you.
Yeah, indeed, kudos to the President of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, Dr. Samuel Ikome Sako. It is quite interesting, this diplomatic effort he has put out there. Kudos to the President and the entire government of Ambazonia. It's obvious that this is not the first huge effort of Dr. Samuel Ikome Sako on the international diplomatic corridor. Time and time again, we've seen and heard his plans to expand and move the struggle to the front lines of diplomatic conversations. President Sako has demonstrated strategic diplomatic foresight in several other outings. In an earlier statement, he revealed the formation of the Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia Diplomatic Commission, the ADC, a specialized body tasked with preparing Ambazonia's delegation for future negotiations and dialogue. Let's listen to this speech of the president from October, where the president made mention of this move, what he's doing right now, talking about alliances with the United States and getting to the diplomatic front, basically, with the United States. Let's take a quick listen to the president.
Dear partners and stakeholders, as Madiba Nelson Mandela once said, our attitude towards any country is determined by their attitude towards our struggle. The United States remains our most trusted ally. We continue to engage the U.S. institutions to help facilitate a peaceful and lasting solution to this ugly conflict. But we no longer place hope in a do-nothing United Nations. That is why we are establishing the Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia Diplomatic Commission, ADC, a structure dedicated to preparing and equipping our delegation for the inevitable dialogue and negotiations. Civil society experts and competent patriots with clean record will be invited. We must succeed where Foncha and his delegation failed.
The ADC marks a shift from symbolic diplomacy to structured international engagement, signaling the Ambazonia is not waiting for recognition but actively building the framework to secure that recognition. Now, Barrister Mbeseha, with the President Sako's growing diplomatic visibility in the United States policy circles and his open call for a more just and strategic partnership with Washington, do you believe Ambazonia is now entering a new phase of international recognition? And if so, what must be done to ensure that this diplomatic momentum translates into real political gains for the people on the ground?
Two things you've asked. From the president's statement, there's something, commonly known as where you want to go to war, where you want to fight for anything. It's not about war, we're not talking about real war. Where you want to fight for anything in the world, you have to consolidate your base because you must take off from somewhere. If you are going to the farm, like in the village where the women go in jungle farm, you consolidate your base by cooking well in your house first. Then you go to the farm and meet other women that will work for 7 hours and do a good job. So we're in the United States. The United States government, the federal government of the United States, is our base. They have accepted to house us. We are hosted here. And so we have that base already. We consolidate it by seeing what they do, by seeking their advice, by trying to cure with them in what is good for us. And so that is important. The next thing you ask is, what shall we do with this diplomacy? The problem we had all along was not our own creation. In most countries around the world, those who are in charge of diplomacy are diplomats, by training. In Cameroon, for example, a good number of them have gone to IRIC, International Relations School. In the Americans and other places, you find that they have gone to school of government. They have been trained in that act of diplomacy. But when it came to Amazonia, which was not our fault, we were caught in the streets. We had to pick our diplomats left and right, people who knew something, and sometimes people who knew nothing. But we had to start from somewhere. And then, of course, bear the blame. Oh, you did not just convince anybody in the world. Those individuals who were chosen were not experts in diplomacy. They are not trained. They were never trained. They were trying to do their best. I think they did their best. We have matured enough at this point to say, look, we don't need to send people to go back to school and learn to come and serve us. We can create a department where they will come together and exchange views, where if need be, we'll get those diplomats to come and give us advice. We're talking about Tebinash. He has been in the foreign service for a long time. We'll get people like that who will come and tell you, look, this is how you talk in diplomatic language. This is what you do when you meet other foreign diplomats. So that creation that the president has done is only strengthening our base. It is such a very good initiative that those who go to do diplomacy need to have a background of what they do. For example, there are common rules. For example, the ambassador of any ambassadors, those who serve as ambassadors anywhere in the world of any country, they know that there are things that you don't say. You know that. If an ambassador, for example, of any country is in Yaoundé now, none of them will come out to say that Mr. Trump did not win the election publicly. Paul Biya did not win the election publicly. They will never say that. They know that he lost. They will send diplomatic cables to their governments and say, well, this is what is going on here. That's what diplomacy is. Who doubts? You think that the president or the ambassador of France to Yaoundé does not know Mr. Biya lost the election? He knows that. That those figures. So it is good that we have our diplomats, those who do these special classes, to get some type of at least refresher courses in terms of meetings with diplomats, in terms of learning what they did not know. Again, in 2016, when we got into this, anybody, at the best, some lawyers could come and say, well, I think I read this in school, I can be a diplomat, I can be anything. But there's more than academic that you learn in diplomacy. The real diplomacy is learned not in the classroom. And so we can say that the president did a good job in two things. I emphasize again. He appreciated the fact that we're in the United States. The United States is our foundation. We respect them. We take the cue from them. Then he appreciated the fact that we have reached a time in this struggle that diplomacy will not be the job of everybody. It should be the job of a select few who have the temperament, who have the training, who have the composure to do diplomacy. That's what it is. And so we can say that the president did a good job. Congratulations for that. And then to tally what happened with Newsweek magazine and the other events that we just talked, we can only say that we're encouraged, we're moving ahead. We're going faster than we thought. Congratulations, Mr. President. Congratulations to all Amazonians. Over to you.
Indeed, congratulations to Mr. President and the entire Amazonia, because the struggle has just gotten even closer to the forefront of international diplomacy. Thank you, Barrister Mbeseha, for joining us on Undaunted today. This is where we'll end with you on the home front report. Thank you for joining in.
Thank me.
All right, coming up next will be news around Africa. On the African scene, political tensions in Ivory Coast have escalated sharply just days before the country heads to the polls for a contentious presidential election. A gendarme was shot and killed while on patrol in the south of the country. Authorities confirmed late Wednesday the assailants remain unidentified, but the incident took place in a region known to be a traditional opposition stronghold and a recent flashpoint for unrest. The violence comes amid mounting political pressure following the disqualification of two major opposition figures, former President Laurent Gbagbo and former Credit Suisse CEO TJ Thiam, from participating in Saturday's elections. Their exclusion has sparked waves of protests across opposition-aligned areas, prompting the government to impose a sweeping ban on all demonstrations. President Alassane Ouattara, 83, is seeking an unprecedented fourth term in office. Since taking power in 2011, he has presided over a period of significant infrastructure development and economic growth. However, critics argue that the benefits of this progress have not been evenly distributed. Rising inequality and a sharp increase in the cost of living have fueled frustration, particularly among younger and poorer citizens. Ouattara's political opponents also accuse him of maintaining overly close ties with France, the country's former colonial ruler, a point of contention that continues to inflame nationalist sentiments. Despite the government's protest ban, campaign rallies by the remaining opposition candidates, Simone Gbagbo, Ahua Don Mello, Jean-Louis Billon, and Henriette Lago, have continued largely uninterrupted. Security has been tightened nationwide as authorities brace for possible unrest during and after the vote. The killing of the gendarme has only deepened fears of further violence in what is already shaping up to be one of the most volatile elections in the country's recent history. And with that, we head on to the rest of the news across the globe. On the foreign scene, the White House has shelved plans for a meeting between the United States President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, just days after Trump announced that both leaders would hold talks in Budapest to discuss the war in Ukraine. Officials confirmed that there are currently no plans for a meeting in the immediate future. The development follows earlier discussions about a potential summit aimed at advancing negotiations towards a ceasefire in Ukraine. A preparatory session between the United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov had been scheduled for this week, but it was replaced by what the White House described as a productive phone conversation. No further reasons were given for the postponement of in-person talks. The proposed Budapest summit was first discussed during a phone call between Trump and Putin. A day before the United States president met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Washington. Reports indicated that the meeting between Trump and Zelensky was tense as Trump allegedly pushed for concessions on eastern Ukrainian territories to secure a peace deal with Russia. Despite the friction, Trump on Monday expressed support for a ceasefire plan backed by Kyiv and European partners, which would freeze the conflict along current front lines. Moscow, however, has rejected the idea, insisting on what it calls a long-term sustainable peace based on broader territorial and security demands, while Russia's position remains tied to recognition of its control over the Donbas region and the demilitarization of Ukraine, conditions that Kyiv and its allies deem unacceptable. Zelensky described the ongoing discussions as the beginning of diplomacy, but accused Moscow of deliberately avoiding genuine negotiations. He maintained that only the issue of long-range weapon supplies could compel Russia to take talks seriously. Putin's recent call with Trump came amid speculation that Washington was preparing to send Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, capable of striking deep into Russian territory. Ukrainian officials believe this possibility pushed Moscow to re-engage diplomatically, viewing it as a strategic move that strengthened Kyiv's negotiating leverage. While still on the foreign scene, the UK is bracing for severe weather this week as heavy rain and winds of up to 75 mph are expected to strike parts of the country from Wednesday night through Thursday, according to the Met Office. Now, a yellow weather warning has been issued for rain across southern England, the East Midlands, parts of Wales and Yorkshire, lasting until 9 p.m. on Thursday. Separate alert for strong winds also covers southwest England and part of Wales, including Somerset, Devon, Cornwall, Swansea, and Pembrokeshire. Forecasters say a deep low-pressure system driven by a powerful jet stream will move across the UK, bringing widespread rainfall and gusty conditions. Some areas, particularly North Devon, Cornwall, and eastern England, could see more than 50 mm of rain within 24 hours. Winds are expected to reach up to 55 mph inland and as high as 65 mph along exposed coast, with the potential for disruption to power supply, transport services, and coastal infrastructure. The Met Office warned that large waves could create hazardous conditions on seafront and coastal roads, posing a small risk of injury or danger to life. Now, before the storm's arrival, weather conditions are expected to alternate between sunny intervals and scattered showers. Residents have been advised to secure property, limit travel where possible, and stay indoors during periods of strong wind. The warnings come just months after Storm Flores brought similar conditions to parts of Scotland in August. And that was it for tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. Before we go, let's take a quick look at the recaps. Undaunted tonight, we brought to you 2 killed and 2 injured in Bamenda by crash amid delayed urban bypass project. We see that foreigners want Biya out as well as global outrage for 92-year-old Paul Biya clinging to power erupt. Paul Biya is declared winner yet again, and we wonder if this is corruption in Cameroon too deep to die. President Sako strategically leans on America for diplomacy, as seen in Newsweek. And around Africa, Ivory Coast tensions soar ahead of presidential election as gendarme was killed in opposition stronghold, and on the foreign scene, White House halts plans for Trump's Putin meeting after Budapest talks proposal. And that was it for tonight's Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. On behalf of the entire Undaunted newsroom, we say thank you for joining in. We'll leave you with ABC Amba TV images. Good night and God bless you.